Okay, welcome back from lunch, guys. If everyone can quickly come in and take your place, we're starting the lightning talks now. So we please ask that you stay in a session till the end of the lightning talks. There'll be 2 talks in this room. There'll be about 15 minutes each. If we have time, we might ask one question or 2 questions at the end. Please reserve your questions till the very end. Okay. Without further, quickly, can we just wait a little bit? Guys at the back, please, can you come in a bit quicker? Great. Okay. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris, and he's going to talk to us about Vaccinate your app with runtime code injection in Swift. Thank you, Chris.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk, Vaccinate your app with runtime code injection in Swift. It's a bit of a mouthful, and a bit, are you okay? Yeah. And a bit ambiguous, but I'll walk you through it. So I wanted to briefly just introduce myself. I'm Chris. I work in a small company called Itch. We started up 2 years ago, and we build mobile applications or solutions for customers. And the biggest difference from my previous employer is that we try to be less biased when it comes to choosing what technology to use, which is of course hard because you always have your own opinions, and those are always the best. So I wanted to start by saying something smart. But I didn't find anything, so instead I'm going to start with a quote from someone who's smarter than me. And I feel that this is kind of relatable. It's Orthodox who wrote, I've been writing code for roughly a decade. A large chunk of that time has been sitting, waiting for my project to compile. It's a nice excuse to practice sword fighting at the office, but really deep down it's frustrating. And keyword being frustrating here. And if you went to Sundal's talk yesterday, we should allow ourselves to be curious and ask questions like, does it really have to be this way? And it really doesn't. So what is this runtime code injection, and how does it help? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with dependency injection, even though dependency injection helps, and it's a super great pattern. But it's actually injecting new code into your app without having to restart the host application. So when I saw this working for the first time, I had a bunch of immediate reactions because it's a lot of fun to play with, and it sort of changes the game in a way, opens up new possibilities for automation in a way, but we'll get to that. So I want to talk about 3 things. First, it's the app itself. Has anyone here used injection for Xcode before? Yeah. So this is injection for Xcode, but better because it works with Swift. It's a Mac application that you can find in the App Store, and I think it should be free at this point. And the source code is on GitHub. So if you want to check out what it does under the hood, like I'm not going to bore you with the details of the implementation. I'm going to show you more how what happens if you apply it in your workflow. Next up is Vaccinate. It's a framework for sort of tackling the notifications that you get from injection. And last but not least, it's injection TDD. And in this case, TDD stands for, you guessed it, test-driven development. So first up, as I mentioned, it's a Mac application that lives in your menu bar on your Mac, and you select the project that you're currently working on, and then it starts a file watcher. So when I save a file, the following things happen. I've cut down some steps, so I save. And this file watcher that I mentioned checks what kind of file it was. It does its magic, and then you get a notification back. So it's your job to sort of capture that response and do the appropriate action when this new class is injected. And then we have vaccine. So again, you save, you get the same kind of notification, but it works further down the pipeline, so it helps you respond in a sane manner. So take a view controller, for example. If you inject a view controller, you kind of want to clean your view state and try to rebuild it. And if you follow the practices of Apple doing the work in view.load, it's going to try and recreate everything that you had before, but with new instances of your objects. So that's pretty straightforward. Injection TDD, which I think is probably the coolest one, and what it does is basically you add it as a pod to your test target, and when you launch a host application, it's gonna start running the test, but it's never gonna stop until you tell it to, of course. So when you save, you get the same kind of notification, and then it runs the tests for you. So when you change the test, or if you change the implementation, it's gonna run it and give you the status of those tests. So you can be a lot more curious, and you can sort of test out things in real time instead of always running that host application. And what I like about all these three things combined is it's as easy to use as pressing save. Wow. I thought instead of talking, I would just show you what it looks like. So I've made this very bare bones application. Oh God, there you go. Let's just hide you for a while. So I have this application that just displays a table view with all each employees. And it doesn't have any styling, so my designer friends would be pretty pissed if we shipped this. It has a master and a detail, so I can sort of go in and see Marcus's gorgeous legs here with some more information about him. But it doesn't really have this itchified feeling, so let's try without restarting. So let's pray to the demigods that this works. So right now I'm at the app delegate, and what I'm gonna do, like the first thing that I do when my application has launched is to load the bundle that sort of establishes the connection between, oh no, I can't see the app here, between the Mac application, Injection 3, and my app. So instead of, sort of cheated a bit because I have pre-prepared methods. So if you want to configure the appearance of this application to give it custom color and custom fonts in the navigation bar, I can simply press save and it appears. So far so good, and there's nothing special more than me responding to the notification that I get. So if I look into the console, I have this message that the mobile era demo app delegate was injected. So if we move forward and we start looking at the styling of cells, I do the same thing here. I have a bunch of methods to configure constraints. A bit overwhelming, but it's just a demo, so don't worry too much about that. So first, let's focus on styling the images. So I can just run this with slow animations, so you'll see what I mean. So focus on the images now, guys. And if I save, ooh. And same thing if I change the fonts. Unfortunately, it's not going to animate just yet. And if I configure the background colors, we're kind of done. So now it looks more itchified. And seeing as I haven't really had to restart, I can tweak. Let's say that we want a bigger image, so let's see what that looks like. 56. I can kind of play around with it. And I saw this by mistake, so if I remove the constraints, what's going to happen? Of course, it's going to animate away. And I could spend way too much time doing that. So it looks okay, but I sort of want to configure the separators between the lines, because I know my designers would complain about that. So I just uncomment style table view, I give it a background color, and I set the separator color to be something else. And bam, we've injected we've injected an app delegate without restarting. We've injected a master cell, and we've configured our view controller to look like we want. So what about this thing? It's a view controller, so you do the same kind of thing. I uncomment some code, stuff happens, and then give it a bit of background, like this, and we're good to go. There are two more things that I want to show you when it comes to injection that are kind of so smart in a way, or I find them nifty. First, now I'm testing this on an iPhone XR, but I don't want to restart and test it on a different phone. So what I can do, seeing as in my app delegate, when it gets the notification, it's going to recreate my entire app. Or in this case, destroy the window and give me a new one. So what I can do is just change the bounds. So this is something that comes from Vaccinate, and it has some predefined values. So if I wanted to test it on an iPhone 4, it's not going to look super good, but it still kind of works. I'm sorry for you if you're still on that phone, but anyway, you get the idea. And let's say that every time I inject, I want a clean slate. So I do it only at the app delegate level. But I do want to work with something that is a few clicks into your sort of apps hierarchy. So every time I inject, I recreate the application. I then create a mocked object, and this is sort of where dependency injection comes in. So I inject my mock, in this case of Marcus. So when I save it, it's always going to show this screen. So when you're working on a specific feature, you can just launch it in this mode temporarily, work with, let's say, your states, get that view controller working in a way that you want, and then just remove this bit of code, like never commit it, but it's only there for development. Whew. Let's go back to the slides. That was the demo. Yay! Thank you, demo gods. Okay, so these are the resources. Like I said, everything is open source. If you have any questions about Vaccinate, you can ask me. Interesting tidbit about injection 3 is when I submitted this talk, I was a user of injection. But now I'm a core contributor, and we're working on some very interesting features when it comes to testing. So we did it just last week or 2 weeks ago. We merged something that is test-driven development inside of the app. So what it's going to do, if I inject a view controller that I have a test for, it's going to run that test after it has injected the initial view controller. So you don't have to run your test suite at all. You'll see it in the console. And injection TDD, I made some pull requests there too. I do a lot of open source, if that wasn't obvious. Okay, so do we have time for questions?
Do. Well done. Perfect. Please, a round of applause for Chris. Thank you.